Confession time. When the idea of a Curaçao episode was first floated, I had to Google not just where it was, but how to pronounce it.
Curaçao.
And the more I researched, the more I discovered, and the more intrigued I became. This tiny island on the southern edge of the Caribbean Sea seemed to be a study in contradiction. Humans, lizards, and the occasional pig lounging side by side on beaches too perfect for a postcard, while violent waves batter its rocky, untamed coastlines just steps away, where Dutch, Spanish, Caribbean, and African influences in language, art, and food don't just coexist, they thrive. This fascinating, seemingly impossible place is a confluence of language, cuisine, and culture, stitched together with art and music that seem to spill out of its streets and its people. And what a joy it is to have found it.
Bem-vindo a Curaçao!
Traveling the world is amazing, until you realize just how much of your personal information is floating around out there. Ever booked a flight and then moments later had emails from every travel site under the sun? Or had a random insurance company call you the moment you land? That's because data brokers, companies you've never heard of, buy and sell your personal information like a souvenir magnet. Your name, your email address, your phone number, it's all fair game to them. Enter Incogni. It's basically like having a digital cleanup crew. You sign up, and they go after these data brokers, getting your info removed so you're not just an easy target for spam, scams, or even worse. I tested it, and within just a few weeks, dozens of my personal records had been wiped. Less junk mail, less sketchy phone calls, and most importantly, my data isn't just floating around out there waiting to be scooped up. So if you care about your privacy while you're traveling, or frankly just in general, check them out at incogni.com/attaché. And while you're there, use code attaché for up to 60% off. Because let's be honest, you should be out there exploring the world, not worrying about who's tracking you while you're doing it. Curaçao is served by Curaçao International Airport, otherwise known as Hato International Airport. It's located 7.5 miles from Willemstad, and it'll take about 20 minutes by road to get into town. Two very important things to know about this airport. First, before you arrive, you must fill out the electronic visa form. It's all over their website of any airline that you travel here with. The second thing is, as we have just discovered, this is a small airport with not a lot of facilities, so immigration and security take a long time. Get here at least 3 hours before your flight, even if you're hand luggage only, because it's going to take you some time to go through those processes. Taxis are readily available outside the airport arrivals hall. The fare to Willemstad ranges from $30 to $40 depending on your exact destination. For a budget-friendly option, the convoy buses operate from the airport to various parts of Willemstad. The fare is approximately $1 with a travel time of around 40 minutes, but realistically only depart every 1 or 2 hours. Getting around Curaçao is relatively straightforward. The island is small, but public transport is very limited. So to experience this place to its fullest, those little secret beaches and all that kind of thing, you need to rent a car. There's a few things to bear in mind with that. Do not rely, at least exclusively, on Google Maps. We found it to be very inaccurate in places. Roundabouts where there are no roundabouts. A restaurant that you were hoping to go for no longer exists or isn't open at the very least, so don't rely on that. And the other tip comes from the sweet rental car agent who said, while you're driving, watch out for road hazards. And when I raised my eyebrow at her, she said, normal stuff. Donkeys, iguanas, pigs, that kind of thing. So
keep your eyes peeled, I guess.
Taxis are available but can be pricey, and they often don't use meters, so agree on a fare up front if you plan on using one. If you're feeling adventurous, the minibuses that locals use can often be an affordable intermediary. But bear in mind the schedules seem pretty ad hoc, so don't expect punctuality or predictability.
So there's a beautiful and famous bridge, unique to the entire world here, that crosses this stretch of water. However, this is also a major maritime thoroughfare because everything in this country, on this island, has to be imported and then exported, brought out again. So they have to allow for ships to come through here as well. So rather remarkably, the bridge folds away and this temporary ferry service, free ferry service, is put into place for as long as the waterway needs to remain open for monstrosities like that.
This is usually the part of the episode where I extol the virtues of exploring a destination on foot. And while that absolutely applies to much of Willemstad, the rest of the island is, quite understandably, less accessible by foot. It's also worth remembering that the heat and humidity almost year-round will sap the energy out of you. So walking half a mile is going to feel a lot more like walking 5 miles. It's the middle of December now, but it's 31 degrees and 80% humidity. It takes it out on you. But wait, I have one last option for your A to B, and it's a good one.
Yes. We ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
The infallible tuk-tuk. Nimble, breezy, and, if you're lucky enough to have a driver like Jay, full of local insight.
Everything used to be white. So the sun goes up and it reflects in the buildings and it causes eye pain and headache.
Interesting.
So the governor at that time decided to allow them to paint their house the color they like, except white. So that's how the island became so colorfully.
That's a great idea.
Now, little did they knew, the governor, he was the owner of the painting factory.
Of course he was. Mandated or not, this island explodes with color, and often in the most breathtaking applications. Spectacular.
This is my favorite painting.
It's absolutely beautiful.
What makes it more my favorite? Because it talks about romance. So those two lovebirds in the middle, they meet each other every day in the same tree, on the same branch at 3 o'clock. It's like me and my wife. When I think about the food, when I pick her up, I want to eat ribs. And I said, man, I was thinking the same thing.
Match made in heaven. We are in heaven after all, as Jay will attest.
I have traveled different islands and different places. And when I came back one time, I realized how beautiful our island is. You know, the colors, the beaches. I discovered that, you know, we have something very unique here.
It's a beautiful place.
Yes. You got that? The shaking hands?
Curaçao's culinary backbone is a vibrant fusion of Dutch, Caribbean, Asian, Latin American, and African influences. I'm on a tiny island at the southernmost point of the Caribbean Sea, and I'm eating some of the best food I've ever had in my life, so go figure. Dutch staples like cheeses, bread, seafood, and Indonesian flavors, brought over via Suriname and other of the Netherlands' former colonies, have left their mark on the island. Then there's the abundant African influence. Let those elements simmer together for generations, and you get an eclectic and delicious array of dishes. Let's dive in. Stoba is about as traditionally Curaçaoan as you can get. It's this hearty, rich, flavorful stew made with either goat or chicken, or in this case, beef that's simmered for hours in tomatoes and bell peppers and onions. And this is what makes it a hallmark of Curaçaoan cooking, an element of sweet, usually provided by either brown sugar or raisins. And that savory sweet balance is something you'll see a lot of in Curaçaoan cooking. It's served alongside either funchi, which is a cornmeal, a little bit like fufu or pap from Africa, or polenta, or rice to soak up all that beautiful sauce. This is Curaçaoan comfort food at its finest. Oh, that's so good. The meat just falls apart. That's been stewed for hours and hours. This stuff is a revelation. I mean, we all have polenta, but it was cooked in milk, butter, salt. Really good health food. And then this mashed potato, which is made with not with spinach, but with a local variety of spinach that you cannot get anywhere else in the world. That is absolutely glorious. And of course, fried plantains. I don't even like bananas, but for some reason, fried plantains, you both look shocked. I like fried plantains.
And here's something else for the easily shocked.
So another staple of Curaçaoan cooking is this beautiful okra soup. It's got obviously okra, but it's also got seafood and beautiful big chunks of ham hock. Now, it is delicious. If you have a thing about textures, maybe not your jam because it's a little bit slimy, and that's fine, but if you are a little sensitive to textures, it might not be your thing. Delicious, full of iron, good for the blood. Primo.
In the spirit of doing things as the locals do, allow me to introduce you to another little gem.
Can I have a pastiche, please? A staple of Curaçaoan street food and, well, just culture and cuisine in general are these beautiful things. Pastiche. My friend Alex, who lives here, described them as a little deep-fried Cornish pasty, and it's actually a pretty good way of describing it. Similar kind of dough, except it's deep-fried. And they come with all manner of fillings: cheese, chicken, ground beef, ham and cheese, salted cod, tuna. And they are kind of a typical breakfast. So you come to a place like this, which is called a snack, where you get snackies, which are this type of thing. You get one of these, cup of coffee, great way to start your Curaçao day. And just take a look at the inside of that beautiful thing. Dutch cheese, fried dough. What more do you want to start your day?
Curaçao is, fairly obviously, an island. An island that sits in warm, clear, tropical water. And that water is teeming with some of the best seafood in the world.
I've been to enough places by the sea that I feel like I can say this with a reasonable amount of authority. Being by the sea does not guarantee good seafood. However, in Curaçao, I am delighted to report that it absolutely does. The bounty of the sea is plentiful in this beautiful island nation, and it is of a variety and quality that is almost beyond comprehension. Mahi-mahi, tuna, shrimp, red snapper, my personal favorite, prepared in just about every way you can possibly imagine, all absolutely delicious, irrespective of the type of establishment you find yourself in. So I strongly urge you, whether you like seafood or not. In fact, my friend Alex, who lives here, does not eat seafood, except here, where he eats this beautiful, beautiful tuna. I don't know if you can get a stronger endorsement than that. Look at that. Beautiful, rare tuna. Perfect.
Curaçao's culinary scene is clearly thriving, with nuanced, complex flavors gracing plates across the island. But before I left, I felt an urge to dig a little deeper, to discover what happens behind the scenes, to learn the provenance of these ingredients and techniques that I've enjoyed so much. And Hofi Cascora seemed like the perfect place to find out.
Curaçao is very dependent on import. Farm work in these conditions, it's hard. The beauty is that we've been busy for 10 years now, and every year you learn again and again from our land.
Curaçao local Femi and her partner Josh initially set up Hofi Cascora as a working farm, inspired by the truly fresh and seasonal produce she experienced during a visit to Holland.
We grew up here with all the import produce, and then when I went to study in Holland, I ended up going to farmers markets, getting seasonal food, and then I remember there was this one time that I had a mandarin, and it was like, this is what a mandarin should taste like.
One hitch. Curaçao's baking climate does not favor the farmer.
I like to stand and grab the shaded areas.
Due to the heat and shortage of fresh water, agriculture on the island is shrinking.
Investments, water, for a lot of other farmers it's hard.
But farmers like Femi and Josh have persevered, embracing methods like wind and solar energy, and in doing so, writing a new chapter in the island's agricultural history.
The nice thing about working with nature is that you have to work with it, not against it. Companion planting, which is like you'll do a higher crop with a lower crop underneath so it gets the shade of it. It grows in the shade. So we have spinach, some zucchini, some string beans that are coming up there. This is some potatoes, sweet potatoes. We have some papayas, some pumpkins, plantain. Try to do a little bit of everything so we can provide for our restaurant, but also other restaurants.
Oh, wow.
And of course, you can't complete the tour without exiting through the gift shop, or restaurant in this case. How could I resist?
There are many opportunities. In fact, I've had very few in my lifetime where the thing that is on the table in front of me now, ready to eat, was in the ground 10 minutes ago. We saw it be harvested, extracted, whatever the correct technical term is, brought to the kitchen, prepared, fried, cassava, yuca fries. If you've never had these, they're very difficult to describe. They're absolutely delicious. They're not like a chip. Don't expect a chip. It's fluffier, lighter. Oh, those are absolutely delicious. I don't think I've ever had these before. Amazing.
And to finish things off, a riff on a Curaçao classic.
One thing you'll see all over the menus in any kind of establishment across the island are pumpkin pancakes. They are absolutely delicious. We've had them. These, however, are a little bit of a riff on that. Pumpkin waffles. Femi was saying earlier that they put them on the menu just as a kind of a gimmick to start with, and 8-9 years later, they haven't been able to take them off because they've proven so popular. The pumpkin flavor is something that's prevalent in the cooking on the island, but this, oh, and pure cinnamon syrup. Look at that. It's just so good. Eggs from the farm. Perfect.
Curaçao uses the Antillean guilder along with a few of its Dutch Caribbean neighbors, but this will be replaced next year, 2025, with the Caribbean guilder. Now, this isn't of huge consequence because the new guilder, just like the current guilder, will be pegged to the US dollar. And US dollars are currently and will remain widely accepted across the island, just like credit cards are as well. So no matter how you pay or what currency you pay with, you'll be fine here.
Let's talk about the cost of things. Before I get into it, it's important to bear in mind that almost everything you consume on this island is imported. That's not a cheap thing to do. So when you come here, especially with food, it's going to feel, well, it's not going to feel cheap. But if you're coming from the US or Western Europe, it will feel comparable. The only difference is the quality seems to be exponentially higher. In a place like this, you're not going to get much fresher than the fish that we're about to consume. So bear that in mind when you're ordering or looking at prices. And on that note, let's do the rundown.
A cup of coffee will cost you around 5 guilders. A pint of beautiful local beer will cost you around 10 guilders. And for the most reliable indicator of a nation's cost, the good old Big Mac, you're going to pay 11 guilders, or $6.15 US. When it comes to tipping, 10 to 15% is a standard, but a lot of restaurants and bars are adding service charges these days, so be sure to look for that before you add anything extra. When it comes to taxis, rounding up to the nearest dollar is more than enough. Let's talk about safety. Curaçao is generally a very safe place. We found people here to be incredibly warm and incredibly welcoming. Of course, you will take the normal precautions you take when you visit any destination as a tourist, tropical or otherwise. That being said, there is one specific thing that is worth mentioning. Unfortunately, car break-ins are prevalent here, prevalent to the point where many car rental companies will advise you not to park in certain parts of the island. But if you don't store anything of value or consequence in your car, you really don't need to worry about this.
What a curious and captivating place this little island is. Even its daily rhythms are attractive. Days melt into evenings, and schedules feel like somebody else's problem. But let's be real, Curaçao isn't just a holiday destination. It's an experience, one that quietly weaves its way into your heart and refuses to leave. From its sun-soaked shores to its kaleidoscope of culture and cuisine, this island offers a kind of magic that is hard to find anywhere else in the world. And as you wander its vibrant streets, meet its warm-hearted people, and taste its soulful flavors, you realize that Curaçao doesn't try to impress you, because it doesn't have to. It just is. And that is what makes it so irresistible.